This week, we're going to look back at our most recent conversations with community FI leaders and pull together the common themes of what they're facing in today's market. What are the common demands and priorities that are driving the agenda of community banks and credit unions? So let's dive right in. First, the growth imperative. Growth is a very common goal. Adding to the customer member roles as well as the balance sheet is essential for the sustainability and competitiveness of financial institutions of all sizes. Often the cost of compliance and other regulatory burdens is the biggest stick incentivizing this posture. Geographic expansion is often done through adding physical branches. For credit unions, growth can also come through a charter conversion. BHCU's CEO Gary Golden shares the Pennsylvania Credit Union's reasoning for taking this approach.
So growth is job one for us right now, and that's basically, we believe, out of necessity. It's getting very difficult to survive at the smaller levels. Credit unions everywhere, our size or smaller, are kind of suffering under the burden of technology requirements, cybersecurity, compliance, and all of those consumer protection rules that are coming in for consumers, which are good for them, but they make it more difficult for the smaller players in the financial services arena. So you really need to get to a size where you can have the foundation and the infrastructure that you need in order to meet all these regulatory requirements and technology requirements in order to compete.
We talked about how you had converted your charter just a few years ago after 60 plus years of history. How did that play into it? How did you come to that decision as that was the approach you wanted to take?
So really, it was a defensive measure because as a SEG, credit union, or a select employment group, what that means is you had to be an employee of the company. In this case, for us, it was Boeing Helicopters here in Delaware County, in order to join. The problem with that is while you have very loyal members at that point because they feel like you're part of them, even though you're not owned by Boeing, you're a separate financial institution that is regulated, by the state and has nothing to do with them operationally. But those people feel very attached to you. You're on their property, you're local, and all of that. But the problem becomes if something goes wrong with that company, in our case, if government contracts dry up and the plant closes or something like that, you're probably out of business. So in order to make sure you have sustainability and can be around for the long term, it made some sense to say, hey, we should probably look at other areas where we can expand and get new members. And for us, that was converting to a community charter so that anyone that lived, worked, goes to school, or worships in Delaware County could then become a member. We continue to pay homage to our roots, of course, but we are adding branches throughout the county. And as you mentioned in your intro, we recently expanded into Chester County, and we'll be adding some new locations there as well.
Mergers or acquiring other institutions is a much bolder and riskier approach. RJ Grimshaw shares his experience of bringing an adjacent financing business into a regulated community bank.
The Bank of Ann Arbor was looking to diversify their assets and their loans, and what UniFi presented to them was an opportunity to be national and just not be relied on the Southeast Michigan economy, which is, of course, driven primarily by the auto industry. So during 08, 09, they made a conscious decision to start looking to diversify. Again, their lending, because they were fortunate enough to have a lot of liquidity to be able to lend out. If you were to ask the chairman of the board, Bill Martin, or Tim Marshall, who's the president of Bank of Ann Arbor, if UniFi was a good acquisition, they would both be glowing, because what it does for the bank is UniFi would borrow, of course, our capital from the bank and pay interest on that. And then we also had our own profitability from a revenue perspective. So it's really a double-edged sword, in terms of the opportunity, in terms of the borrowing from the bank, and then our bottom line profitability as well. And Bank of Ann Arbor is a well-run institution that really focuses on, if you look at their call reports and things of that nature, they're always ranked in the top 0.5% of community banks across the country. To answer your question specifically, it was a cultural fit. And that's what made it work. And so many companies, and I've been through many mergers and acquisitions on both sides of it, it really comes down to the culture. Irvin and Bank of Ann Arbor thought the same way in terms of their go-to-market, how they handle a customer first, customer-centric, cultural-centric, and that's why it worked, and it will continue to work.
Mergers aren't limited just to banks. Credit unions also leverage this tactic, even at relatively large scale and in rapid succession. Skyla Credit Union's recent series of mergers shows what is possible.
Skyla has gone through 2 mergers of recent, both due to strategic reasons to expand our presence in the marketplace and generate scale in today's competitive and increasingly harder regulatory environment. We knew we needed to accelerate our position. Our leaders at the time did want to seek out partnering credit unions that thought like us, that we believed first and foremost was a cultural fit, believing that's the first box to check as we look at merger partners. And that first journey began in 2021 as we merged with Premier Credit Union, but still branded under the name Charlotte Metro. And then fast forward to 2023, we merged with Parsons Credit Union, whose headquarters was in Pasadena, California, but brought on a digital expertise that we knew we needed, in addition to scale, to push Skyla well into the 21st century. Charlotte Metro was around $750 million, and Premier was in the low $200 million range, maybe $225. By the time the merger occurred, it pushed us over that $1 billion threshold. So momentarily was a celebratory moment, thinking that extra comma meant efficiencies and scale were automatically generated for us. And then first of 2023, prior to merging with Parsons, Skyla as an entity was around 1.2 billion, and Parsons pushing 300 million. So it accelerated us beyond the 1.4 billion mark, and through natural growth since then, we've now crested over 1.5.
Second, staying relevant. Sustainability requires a long-term approach to customer member acquisition. Fed research has shown community FIs as a whole are exposed to both a slower growing and older clientele base, over half of which are over 51 years old. This trend presents a unique risk to smaller institutions beyond the risk of a declining base of customers. The inability to match the assets from older depositors with lending to younger borrowers creates a systemic risk to community FIs. Economics professor Gazi Kabas shares results from his published research on this issue.
Aging puts banks in a kind of a peculiar place, because on the one hand, they have a very, high lending capacity. But on the other hand, there is nobody that they can lend to. And we find that under these conditions, banks start to lend in areas where they don't have any branch. And then the mortgages that they give in these new quote-unquote areas have significantly higher loan-to-income ratios, which is kind of the main measure for risk-taking. So if you think about the period right before global financial crisis, Bernanke said that, there's a savings glut, right? So there is an increase in the savings. And then he kind of defined that, because of this savings glut, banks started to reach for yield. In our case, population aging can create a similar effect. Higher lending capacity, banks don't have any lending opportunities, therefore they reach for yield in other areas with higher loan-to-income ratios.
Third is community impact. Community involvement is a cornerstone of many financial institutions. They are not just about managing money. They play a crucial role in supporting and developing local communities. Texas Vista Bank provides an example of addressing the unique local cultural issues that community FIs are in a position to address.
And he left there thinking every student athlete at Dallas Carter is hoping to make it big, right? They see their only path out as professional athletes. Yeah. And he said, here we have this lack of diversity in the banking industry of people wanting to go into this field. Why can we not help folks from all across, in sports being the common language, to understand that there are other ways to be successful in life? What we're doing is very different. What we're doing is trying to build relationships with those coaches, with those programs, with those students, and help them learn where money comes from, learn how to make it, spend it, needs versus wants, at young ages.
They often don't want to hear about financial literacy straight out. They kind of feel like it's kind of corny, it's kind of outdated. Oftentimes when the stereotypes, you have older white men teaching it, but to have someone that they can relate to and they can see that plays sports, that's also teaching a number of things that they can relate to, it kind of pulls them in, allows them to understand it a bit more and understand the importance and the value of it.
Financial education is often at the center of community outreach. Bree Shellito of Colorado's End Credit Union shares their blueprint for leveraging empathy to bake financial wellness into their entire relationship model with members and the community at large.
Truly, our mission statement is to improve financial lives. And by doing that, we have this team that actually goes out into the community. We offer that in several different ways, in person, virtual, but what we're doing is really teaching people about finances. Some of that starts with the basics, things like budgeting, credit, debt repayment, but even goes further on to talk about things like car buying, home buying, investments. But we do that in several different ways, certainly through classes. We work with schools, organizations. A lot of organizations reach out to us to come and teach something at their organization, but we also reach out to schools. We want to partner closely with both members and non-members in our community and just make sure they're feeling financially well. In addition to classes, we offer webinars where people can join. We record those so they can really join those at any time, ask questions. And then we also offer one-on-one financial coaching. And that's really important to us because as much as classes in the community and talking about some of those concepts as a group helps, really digging in and leaning into their situation and how it applies to them is where you take that to the next step. Because as much as it often seems simple when you work for a bank or a credit union, kind of the understanding of money, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of shame around things with money. And so when people have access to this information, and that's even where some of our partnerships come in, this is not the funnest topic. And when they're in charge of choosing between a webinar on finances and something else fun, the likelihood they'll choose something else fun. So we know that. So we work with a lot of partnerships where it's a required audience. Maybe it's a classroom. We work with military organizations that are here in Colorado. So if they're required to be there, whether they were excited for it or not, we do find that often they're very appreciative that we were there, and we find that they really have gained a lot of insight through sitting through a class, and often they will schedule appointments with us to do some financial coaching, which they otherwise wouldn't.
Fourth, enhancing customer experience, especially digital experience. Digital transformation is reshaping the financial sector. In an effort to meet the needs of younger consumers, institutions are transitioning to more convenient digital experiences, often mobile first. Tropical FCU has tackled this need with a twofold approach of shifting resources from physical presence into a more personalized and relevant digital one for its members.
We had a footprint of 22 branches, and a lot of those were in stores like Walmart. We had quite a few branches inside of Walmarts. And it was very expensive. And we started realizing that we could do just as much at much more efficient cost by doing things in a digital space. But then we also had to put the investments into digital so that experience would meet the expectations of consumers as time went on. I know a lot of times people think personalization is saying, "Dear Amy," and that's personalization. No, that's not. That's just a data point that you pull in and say, "Here, I'm delivering this to Amy, so let's call her by her name." But what is the content of that message? And does that pertain to Amy? And that's the difference that Channel has been able to make for us, that we're able to deliver curated content to each individual member based on the different products and services that they have with us, as well as how they interact with that individual pearl.
The pandemic had accelerated the demand for digital services. Many financial institutions have responded by enhancing their digital platforms based on member feedback. This includes improved digital banking features and the ability to access services remotely, which has become increasingly important.
It was important for people to understand that change is a part of our business model. It just is. It is not going to go away. The one constant is going to be change. And I think that if 2020 taught us anything, it was definitely that we had to be agile. We had to be able to move quickly.
Finally, fifth, unique and differentiated business models. Some of the most innovative approaches to meeting customers where they aren't coming from the big four or the regional banks, but from the grassroots approach of community-based organizations. Climate First Bank, for example, leverages its mission-based approach to create not only customer experiences, but also products themselves to bring their customers on a journey for who they want to be.
We hired a really, really high-profile CTO when the bank started, and he's built out a proprietary online origination platform for a solar lending that a community bank of our size would never dream of having without a third party who would deliver half of what we expected. And that's driven substantial solar loan production. So today we probably have 80 million in individual consumer loans, solar loans on our books, roughly 2,500 loans in about a year and a half. That's something a normal community bank in Florida can't do, won't do. I'm not trying to do a transaction. I want a relationship. I want to help them scale their companies. I'm lucky enough at 39 that I bank, 7 to 10 companies that came out of the Great Recession. You started coming out of the Great Recession and now are 50, 60, 70, maybe even 100 million in revenue. And I consider myself lucky to help advise them from zero to that 50, 60, 70 or 100 million in revenue. That's a fun ride. That's what's exciting about being a banker is you make small little suggestions that impact this greater good that some of these companies are employing 1,000 people, 800 people. So that's the most fun. And then when you gain that trust by showing them repeatedly that you're that you can be a trusted advisor and give them good business advice, that's when you start, I think, saying, hey, have you thought about solar? Have you thought about doing, hey, landscape company, have you thought about doing either propane mowers or electric mowers? Technology's improved. Your bowling alley that throws off a massive electric bill. Let me have a solar contractor come in and pitch you on solar, but also on how to make the use of your power more efficient. So that's the fun stuff that I enjoy about banking and the value we bring to our customers. I feel like other banks don't necessarily do. We're not chasing a dollar, we're chasing relationships.
Addressing unmet needs in a more holistic way can also guide the strategy and tactics for how you serve your community. Pennsylvania's Community First Funds uses their ability to structure financing as a way to address gaps in affordable housing, offering Spanish language financial literacy training, and overall bridge the financial inclusion gap.
One of the projects I think that we are very excited about is the fact that as a CDFI, we're able to tap into what they call new market tax credits. A new market tax credit can actually lower a project by a factor sometimes of 25, even 30%. So when you put together a capital stack, right? And I can use as an example projects that we have going on right now in Reading. But we have one of probably the largest Latino grocer who is building a tremendous facility in downtown Reading. That's about probably close to a $6 million project right now. That's going to bring affordable fresh foods to an area basically that has a food desert right now. So it's not only, like I said, not only working with the individual, but also addressing those needs that the community has at this place. In addition to that, we also are working with another project, same community, also in Berks County, that is also rehabbing an old hospital in downtown Reading, so that Penn State Hershey and a federally qualified health clinic can provide access to affordable health care. And that's what I'm saying when I talk about social determinants of health, right? It's not just providing capital or providing, the capital stack that is needed for a project. At the end of the day, we have to quantify what is the community impact that we're having.
So we've seen community financial institutions are evolving to meet the changing needs of their communities. Those needs are as different and as unique as the communities they serve. What is common, however, are the pressures that those organizations feel to both grow, stay relevant and attract a new generation of consumer, impact their local community, improve their digital experience, and stand out in their markets. Community banking is an essential part of our country's economy. However, it's a sector that is under constant pressure to evolve and reinvent the what and the how it does to fill the critical needs of our neighbors and the communities they live in. In our next episode, we'll explore the unique approaches and real innovation that's coming from one of the most effective and resilient sectors of the country's financial systems, community banks and credit unions.